Good morning. First and foremost, on behalf of myself, my colleagues, Gene here and Guillermo, I would like to thank you for your time and for your attention. And I noticed a lot of you guys were taking notes, and I appreciate that. I know it's been a long process, but I appreciate you guys hanging in there with us. But I remember I told you in the opening statement we'd be presenting 40 witnesses to you, and I think we had about 38. And in the opening statement, I gave you an outline of where I was going. And that's what I want to talk about right here. Now, in the opening statement, the defense called the defendant, Kaitlin Armstrong, a shrinking violet. It's not me. I don't call names. They called her a shrinking violet. Now, paragraph 12 in your charge talks about all the evidence comes from here. This is your shrinking violet. This is what the evidence showed you who she really is. January 12th, 4 months before Mo Wilson was killed and taken from us. Now, I also told you in opening statements, and I used my hands, that the last thing that Mo Wilson did on this earth on May 11th, 2022 at 9:15 p.m. was scream in terror. And that evidence came from Mr. Donald's audio from his camera, G4 camera, from this witness stand. I was true to my word. I brought that evidence to you. And I also told you on that tape, heard 2 shots. And there was a 4 or 5 second pause. I told you in opening, and I presented it to you pursuant to paragraph 12, evidence from the witness stand, that she stood over her. This young lady over here, the defendant, Kaitlin Armstrong, I told her she stood over her after she shot her in the head twice and put another bullet right in her heart. You heard Dr. DeRusi, the ME. That third bullet was right in her heart. And she also testified that because of the exit wound, she was up against something. I submit to you, she was up against the floor. 2 to the head, and she was laying on the floor, probably already dead. And for good measure, the defendant walked up to her and put another bullet right in her heart. And I also told you that 19 days before this trial, she escaped from the sheriff's department. Now, I'm going to tell you the irony of this. We picked this jury on October 30th. We started our evidence on November the 1st, Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, November the 1st. It's a day that the Mexican-American culture celebrate those who have gone before them. We started this evidence on the Day of the Dead. So you see from this video here, you see her? She's not just running from the sheriff's department. No, sir. That's 19 days before this trial. She's running from you, and 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 she's running from all of you on the back row, because you are a jury of her peers. Everybody deserves their day in court, and she got hers. And you can see from this video, she didn't want to face you. Now, the offense charge in this case is murder. We're going to go over this really quickly because it's in your charge. Murder. These are the elements that we have to prove to you. That the defendant intentionally or knowingly caused the death of an individual or intends to cause serious bodily injury and commits an act clearly dangerous to human life that causes the death of an individual. Two ways to commit it. A person intentionally or knowingly caused the death of an individual. Intentionally. It gives you a definition. A person acts intentionally or with intent with respect to a result of her conduct when it is her conscious objective to cause the result. Or you can go on the second part, which is knowingly. A person acts knowingly or with knowledge with respect to a result of her conduct when she is aware that her conduct is reasonably certain to cause the result. It even defines an individual. Individual means a human being who is alive. It defines serious bodily injury. Bodily injury that causes a substantial risk of death or that causes death, serious permanent disfigurement, or protracted loss. And it even defines a firearm. A firearm means any device designed, made, or adapted to expel a projectile through a barrel by using the energy generated by an explosion or burning substance or any device readily convertible to that use. Now, unanimity. What that means is this. You need to be unanimous that the defendant committed murder. You do not need to be unanimous on what theory you use if, for some reason, you don't have the same theory. Some can believe that it was intentional, some can believe that it's knowingly, and some can believe that she just committed an act clearly dangerous to human life. As long as you all believe that the defendant on May 11th caused the death of Anna Mariah Wilson. So, this is what the state has to prove, right here. On or about May 11th. I think we've got a lot of evidence about what day it happened. In Travis County, Texas. We've talked about from through the detective that this happened in Travis County. That the defendant, Kaitlin Armstrong, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Anna Mariah Wilson or intended to cause serious bodily injury and committed an act clearly dangerous to human life that caused the death of Anna Mariah Wilson with the firearm. I believe the state has met that burden. I think we've proved all them elements, and I believe we have proved them beyond a reasonable doubt. So, if you remember, doing an opening statement, the defense showed you a little mountain we had to climb. I'll submit to you that pursuant to paragraph 12, through those 40 witnesses, we climbed this mountain. Never seen so much evidence in my life against one person. Now, the purpose of this is to relate to Steve Aston, the ballistics tool mark expert, who, by the way, testified that he's never had issue with proficiency tests. And they asked him 3 different times. So you never made a mistake? No. So you never made a mistake? No. So you never made a mistake? No. Now, if you allege that he made a mistake, guess what? Pursuant to paragraph 12, no evidence that he made a mistake came from that witness chair. In fact, you heard 3 hours of testimony from Mr. Tobin. And at the end of 3.5 hours, he said, and I quote from Mr. Gonzalez, "No, I'm not here to contest his findings." That's 4 hours of our life we'll never get back. I said, not my words. It may be funny, but those are his words. I'm not here to contest his finding or to say that it's not a match. Now, they asked Steve Aston several times, why did you not exclude all other guns in the world. No one else in the world had a 6-hour P365 and left their DNA at the scene. Nobody else in the world fit that description. No one else in the world was angry that their boyfriend was out with Mo Wilson. Just her. No one else in the world had their Jeep circling 1708B Maple for an hour before you heard that 915 shot. No one else in the world matched that description. That's what you do when you got nothing. You pick on the detective and you talk to him about where you didn't look. Not the mountain of evidence that we have. You try to distract you from that. And finally, no one else in the world left the scene of the murder in Kaitlin Armstrong's Jeep that was parked in that alley from 8:40 p.m., 2 minutes after the murder. We don't need no one else in the world to make these facts that came from that chair true. These are not my words. These are facts that came from the witness chair. No one else in the world fits this criteria. So that, did you check every gun in the world? That's called a rabbit hole they want you to go down. Only Kaitlin Armstrong, the defendant, fits these facts that was presented to you through that witness chair. Now, let's talk about her best friends, one of them. One of them says she's a friend, one of them says she's a best friend. She told Jacqueline Chastain about the gun a month after it was purchased. Nicole Mertz said, I've never seen her that upset before, and that's why I remember. Never seen her that upset before. These are her friends. We called them, but they were her friends. You heard them. Don't let anybody recharacterize a relationship. Those two ladies got on the stands and said, we are her friends, and one of them said, she's my best friend. And we know Kaitlin called Mo Wilson to confront her about Kate. We know that from the cell phone records. Now, we don't know exactly what she said, so I'm not going to put that out there. But we know she called her. And we know Colin texted her and said, WTF. And we all know what that means. And what's even more chilling is that when the defendant's two best friends heard that Mo Wilson was dead, they called the police unsolicited. And they said, you better check her out. You better look at her. Now, they both testified that, no, I didn't take that serious in January. But then when they backed up and put it together about how angry she was, about her shaking to the point where she has never seen that anger before. If anybody knows you, your best friend knows you. Now, they may get up and say he's not our best friend. But guess what? Did anybody sit right here and contradict Chastain and Mertz's testimony that they were her friend and her best friend? No. So that's the evidence that you have to work with. Her best friend called the police on her. Now let's talk about these surveillance videos. You heard a lot of talk about the surveillance videos didn't cover the stairs to Cash's house. No. Generally, people have surveillance cameras to protect their own property. The lady in the alley, she had a camera in the front and the back of her house. Her camera wasn't to figure out who might go up Cash's stairs and kill her best friend, Mo Wilson. Her camera was for her own protection. It was on 18th Street, north. And to the east, on Maple, there was a couple of cameras. And those cameras point to the front of those people's house and their porches for their protection, not in the alley. Once again, they want you to look somewhere where the evidence is not. And when she left, you didn't see the Jeep. The reason you didn't see the Jeep is she left south in the alley. The camera was north and east. Remember further north, the camera caught the motorcycle going by? There was no camera. Now, I'm not suggesting that she knew that at all. I don't believe she did. Because if she did, I don't believe she'd been circling in that Jeep that whole time. But no, a camera didn't catch her leaving. The GPS, that Jeep put her there. Now, let's talk about this black Jeep. Remember initially when the 3 or 4 video people came up here? And I want you to split your mind down the middle. On the left side, all this noise I'm talking up here, and they're going to be talking. On the right side, I want you to think about section 12 of your charge and what came from this witness statement. Now, initially, when those video people came about, you remember the cross-examination? Do you know how many black Jeeps in Austin? Do you know how many black Jeeps in the neighborhood? How do you know it's that black Jeep? How do you know it's a Jeep? Aren't there a lot of black SUVs? Well, the minute Daniel Portnoy comes up and takes that GPS out of her Jeep, and we see her at CarMax in her Jeep, now they switch gears to how do you know she was driving her Jeep? You see the rabbit holes they're going to try to send you down? First, it wasn't her Jeep. Then we got proof that it was her Jeep. And now she wasn't driving the Jeep. Now, I want you to look at your picture on the screen and think about one thing. At 9:17, track 100 of that Jeep, 2 minutes after that murder, just a few feet down that alley. Track 100 starts at 9:17. Now, this is not a true picture of 9:55 p.m. that night. I just wanted to show you this because you see Colin Strickland in that garage right there? That's exactly where he said he was at 9:55 p.m. or somewhere around that time when Kaitlin Armstrong, the defendant, drove up from murdering Mo Wilson in that black Jeep. The same black Jeep that from our first 10 witnesses wasn't a black Jeep, wasn't her Jeep. And then the second set of witnesses, she wasn't in the Jeep. That same black Jeep that she was not in, drove up. And like Colin testified, he was in the driveway with the garage up when she showed up at 9:55. That takes away all these phantom people. You remember all that talk about how many people went to the house for this, that, and the other? Rabbit holes. Go back to section 12 in this chair. Did you get any testimony that anybody was driving that black Jeep, her black Jeep, with her phone? Now, Ms. Mazak, who did a wonderful job, all those text messages, all those things, they came back and made her say, Kaitlin's phone, not Kaitlin with her phone. To imply that someone may have stolen her Jeep, stolen her phone, and the geolocation put them in the same place. So whoever stole her Jeep and stole her phone, they was running side by side. But check this out. Whoever stole her phone and was in her Jeep sent somebody a text message with her home address from that phone that they stole that was not in her possession, if you believe that. And that same person who had Kaitlin Armstrong, the defendant's phone, sent Kaitlin Strickland a text message about a lawsuit that they had going on with some real estate issues. So if she didn't have her phone, whoever stole her Jeep and her phone was also interested in her lawsuit and where she lived, if you believe that. And there's no evidence to suggest that it was anybody other than her. And finally, that same phone says she had to run errands earlier, and she texted Colin saying "Fini," which I think means finished. So whoever had her phone, if it wasn't her, they were finished running their errands just like she was. See, the more I talk, the more ridiculous it gets that it wasn't her with that Jeep and that phone. Now, they talked about Pam Mazak, that GPS, they asked her 3 or 4 times, is GPS more accurate than CDR data? She said yes. Now, remember when Portnoy was there, they kept talking about how GPS wasn't that accurate. 2 days later, Mazak get there. Now, GPS is more accurate than CDR, isn't it? We agree, it's accurate, because it puts her Jeep at the scene, puts it at 8:40, has it leaving about 9:17, and has it driving up at her home at 9:50. Her Jeep, her GPS, pulled out of her car at CarMax. And the DNA on the bike puts her at the scene. Proof that Kaitlin was there when Mo Wilson was shot. Gunshots at 9:15. Jeep parked in the alley, leaves after the gunshots. Caitlin's DNA on the bike. Shell casings that matched the gun. And like Detective Ramirez said, it was personal. So she shot her in the heart after she's all on the ground based on the exit of that bullet. Now, when the defense expert got up there, he said 3 times, and I'm like, whoa. DNA tells us who was there. I agree. That's their expert, not ours. Our expert was more cautious talking about the ratio. He said DNA tells us who was there. And I agree. She was there. I'll go to this evidence real quickly. The video evidence shows us that Kaitlin was circling 1708 maybe for about an hour. Shows us her Jeep in the alley 1 minute before Mo unlocked the door. Cell phone corroborates the GPS. Has all those personal messages. DNA evidence, Dr. Caliphate talks about tertiary and quaternary or whatever that 4th level is transfer, never seen it. And the evidence from Samantha Perkins that it's 224 billion times more likely that the DNA included Kaitlin Armstrong as opposed to somebody else. Now, you've heard a lot of testimony about that third profile. Could have been anybody. Could have been a mechanic. Could have been an airport person. It could have been anybody's DNA. So don't let them go down that rabbit hole, and that's the real killer, some kind of grassy knoll theory, because you know what that doesn't explain? That third person DNA? It doesn't explain Kaitlin Armstrong's DNA on that bike. That's what it doesn't, unless she took somebody with her. So don't go down the rabbit hole, because there's no evidence that any third person did that. And look at all the other evidence and just use your common sense. Steve Aston, very confident that Kaitlin Armstrong's 6-hour P365 is the gun that killed Mo Wilson. And the GPS has her circling for an hour before, tracks her the whole time. Undisputed from the witness stand. I talked about this. You didn't see her exit route because she went a different way than where the cameras was. Mid-South. This is a race that she had just won, one of her recent races. Mo Wilson is a 25-year-old prodigy. Everybody in the cycling community that testified kind of shook their head about how good she was, and she was new at it. A prodigy. Taken from Matt and Mr. and Miss Wilson at the age of 25. Kaitlin Cash over there on the front row. When I talked to her, call me Cash. Kaitlin killed my friend. That's why we call her Cash. Kaitlin with a C, but poor thing don't even like her own name anymore. She pumped her friend's heart over 100 times. You heard it on the 911 call. For 10 minutes until the first responders got there. Not knowing she'd probably been dead for 45 minutes. Then she runs to Costa Rica, had plastic surgery, on the beach teaching yoga while the Wilsons are trying to pick up the pieces. The state has met its burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I think we climbed past that mountain and climbed Mount Everest. Overwhelming. Now, we're about to get up here and send you down a bunch of rabbit holes. I ask you to do me one favor. The tools of a prodigy. She's about to set the world on fire. So don't do me a favor. Do Mo Wilson a favor. And I got one last thing to say to you. Get your notepad. Write a line down the middle of it. If you don't have a notepad, use a notepad in your brain. And when they get up here, do something for me, but do it for Mo. When they say something and singing out a rabbit hole, write it on the left side. If it's proven from the evidence chair, pursuant to paragraph 12 of your charge, write it on the right side of your paper. And we've been here a long time, but we ain't got to stay much longer, because when you get to the back, I submit you that when you separate the left side of the paper from the right side of the paper, it's going to be blank, and we can get out here pretty quickly and find her guilty of shooting Mo Wilson in the heart and in the head and taking away this prodigy at the age of 25. Don't think about closure. Don't think about none of that. Don't think about the community. That's not your burden. Your burden is to follow the law. I only ask you to do one thing. Justice for Mo Wilson. The state has met its burden. I'm asking you to find her guilty. And don't let her run like she'll have to do 19 days before this trial. Thank you.